Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of The Late Drop. I'm Jamie Mitchell, and this week we'll be having none other than Matt Bromley on the podcast. Matt is a hard-charging South African, very well known for charging waves in Cape Town, such as Dungeons, Sunset. He's also known for chasing really heavy water slabs, big barreling waves around the world. He had that famous session at Nias a few years ago. He's been making some really cool edits of late, chasing big waves around the world. So I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Matt Bromley, welcome to The Late Drop, my man. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, and you, man?
Yeah, good. Good. You know, good all things considering, right? You know, we actually just went back into a sort of a lockdown mode in Hawaii again. Spiking cases, all that sort of stuff, but. You know, in the big scheme of things, being in Hawaii has been pretty good in this whole craziness. You know, how's it been in South Africa?
Well, I mean, yeah, you guys are you allowed to surf still in the lockdown?
We're allowed to surf. We're allowed to access the beach. We just can't hang out. So you just can't post. You can't post up at the beach. But so with the kids, it's hard, right? You know, I got two young girls, 5 and 2, and so, it's hard to. We just quickly ran down the beach just then before I started talking to you. We just ran down, jumped in the water, had a swim, came back. So it's harder for them. Cool. Like our lives haven't changed that much because we can still go jump in, work out, whatever it is. Yeah. But as in going and hanging out, it's you can't do that anymore, and that just changed a few days ago.
Sure, maybe. Yeah, man. So South Africa, the initial lockdown was like the beaches were closed. You weren't allowed to surf for, I think we did like 2 months of no surfing, and then people were surfing illegally. And then there was just like this whole weird vibe here. Like the police were arresting people, but like people were just overthrowing the police.
Yeah.
And now the beaches are still, I think, like legal. You're not allowed to be on the beach, but like everyone's kind of just over it now and like cruising, and restaurants are starting to open up again. But our economy was always struggling, and now it's like really taking a hit. Like there's a lot of people in really tough positions.
Yeah, it's a tough time. I saw that you guys had a rough start of it, but I tell you what, from looking at the footage the last 5-6 weeks, you guys have been on a roll for swell. I've been looking at the charts, and God, there's been a ton of purple blobs coming up underneath you guys. And I just saw Josh's post of that, of that below sea level draining right, and it just and Twiggy mentioned something about it being like the best run of swell for years, like on the East Coast, So tell us a little bit about that. It seems like you guys have been getting pumping waves.
Yeah, so the waves have been pumping up the East Coast. Like they've had, I think, the best winter they've ever had. Obviously up there in Durban, they get offshores every morning, and all they need is swell to make it happen, and then they're getting like cooking waves. But I did one mission up there, which was great. Like we scored a really good swell. But down here in Cape Town, we've had this strange high pressure system sitting off the coast of Cape Town, and we've had so many big blobs coming up to hit. Like the forecast is looking incredible, like for multiple perfect big Dungeons days. And then like you watch the system come up, and then there's this high pressure seems to like make everything shift a bit south. And we haven't had one Dungeons day. It's all been going up to Java and then up to Durban. So it's been really frustrating for everyone here in Cape Town, unfortunately. And then my wife and I actually ended up getting the virus. So we just kind of came out of lockdown like a week ago of our isolation.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting times here for sure.
Wow. So did you? How was it then? How was the virus for you guys? Obviously, you guys are healthy and stuff, but what did it feel like? You're the first person I know that has had the virus officially.
Really?
Yeah. I have no one.
You start thinking it's like a myth or something, hey?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't even exist.
Was it like a bad cold or like a bad flu, or was it mellow or?
So for my wife, it was like a bad flu, and I was a little bit nervous because it went into her chest and she was coughing a lot, but she was all right. And then for me, it was just like a pretty mild flu, but I lost my sense of smell, and I also got really bad stomach cramps, which is quite weird to get like for like flu. But yeah, for me, it was like a mild flu. Eh? So, and now it feels great because I can cruise around and I think I'm immune,
Yeah.
at least for the next 6 months. So that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Cool. Yeah. I saw that swell that you guys were all psyched on the forecast. I saw Frank and a bunch of you guys posting like that last swell, and you guys got beautiful waves. It looked like you went to sunset, but you were pretty disappointed because it looked like it was going to be big and clean. I can't imagine what it would have been like because the conditions looked immaculate, and but the swell just never sort of evaluated.
Yeah, I think it was reading to be like 4.2 meters at 18 seconds, which for us that should be like 35-foot face waves at Dungeons. Like that's huge, and it was like light winds. We were just so psyched. We thought it was going to be the best day ever, and we were sitting on the mountain at Chapman's Peak, just watching it, and we're just watching it like, okay, the swell's a bit late. Because like you look across the bay at Dungeons and it's in front of the big Sentinel Mountain, but like you can't see it too well because it's so far away. And we're just waiting for something to break. And then like one wave broke, we're like, okay, it's on. We launched the skis and went out to Dungeons, and then we sat out there for another hour and not one wave broke on the reef. And then we scooted across to sunset on the other side of the bay. And then that was beautiful, like 12-foot perfect peaks. It was amazing. But yeah, we were expecting like 30-foot waves. And that's been a constant cycle. Like even when I chased the swell up to Durban, and we had some really sick waves, like the sandbars there have just been lighting up. They've been amazing. But there's been only one flight a day between Durban and Cape Town, and Alan van Geysen and I were planning to go up to Durban for one session and then fly back to surf Dungeons the next day, which was reading 6 meters at 18 seconds. And there ended up being no flights available, and we were considering driving through the night, like 17 hours to get home. But luckily we didn't do it because the swell didn't even pitch. Like 6 meters just evaporated. So it was pretty crazy. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Seen some weird things happening.
Yeah. Well, let's hope we get a good winter season here. And so I'd like to go back to the start, because I've been sort of just trying to go through the timeline of most of the guys that have been on the podcast, the guys and girls. So were you born in Cape Town, or were you born somewhere else in South Africa and then moved to Cape Town?
Yeah, I was born in Cape Town. I moved to the beach when I was 12. We had a sick house on the beach, and it looks straight out to sunset. So like from a grommet, I knew one day I wanted to surf like big waves. Back then, the guys were using a rubber duck like boat to tow into the waves out at sunset. That was like the same time when Laird and them like just first started towing, so it was ages ago. And yeah, I knew one day I wanted to go and surf sunset. And then like across the bay is when the big winter swells, you could see Dungeons exploding up the mountain. So yeah, it was a great place to grow up in Cormacky.
Yeah. And so South Africa is very much like Australia. I feel like Durban is nearly a spitting image of the Gold Coast. The same temperature style, all that sort of stuff. But
yeah.
But you growing up, a kid that play, like rugby and rugby league, and like, were you sort of an athlete as well growing up as a kid, or was it surfing all the way?
Yeah, so I did do rugby and stuff, but I was a provincial swimmer, and I think that like laid such a good foundation for me to surf big waves because I've got a good paddle. And yeah, so I went from like the discipline and focus of swimming and like, I don't know, 4 times a week, like 3-4 kilometers in the pool from when I was super young. And then I guess took that discipline into surfing, and it really laid a good foundation for me.
Yeah, I'm the same. I swam a ton when I was a kid, and I don't think there's a better foundation for not just big waves, but I think surfing and the beach and being in heavy water in general, I think that if you've got a good base in swimming, I think that bodes well and gives you the confidence. And even with the breathing and the bilateral breathing and all that stuff, I think it's such gives you an advantage for sure.
Totally, it's like, yeah, it's incredible. Did you ever get into water polo?
Water polo wasn't so big in Australia. I literally played every sport I could to get out of school. Didn't matter what it was. But water polo, not so. Water polo is big in Hawaii and sort of bigger in the States. It seems like it's bigger in Europe. The European countries, it's huge. But yeah, no, I didn't really play. I swam competitively heavy, like same as you. Like I would swim 4 to 5 times a week. I'd be up at 5 o'clock in the morning, swimming 5 to 6 kilometers, and I did that right up until I was, when I was doing my Molokai races, everything. So like for freaking 20 plus years, I'd still go and swim, 2-3 kilometers a couple of times a week now. I enjoy it more now than I did back then, obviously, because like you said before, the discipline. There's nothing like the discipline of swimming because it's so goddamn boring. You're looking at a black line, and it's it's a grinding sport. It's brutal. But if you can get your head around being consistently turning up to the pool to swim, then that gives you a really good mental space to be good at anything, I think.
Yeah, totally. I found that it just gave me such a good base fitness level. Like even if I hadn't been like training super hard up to a swell, like I still I think water polo, I also did that provincially, and like in water polo the guys are trying to drown you like all the time pretty much, and that roughness, it like really helped me also with the panic sensation you get in surfing, like you can't panic. But yeah, I felt like even if I hadn't been training super hard leading up to a swell, like I've got that base fitness from being really comfortable in the water, and
I think for me it's the mental side. Like physically that you've got that base, because I could probably go and swim 3 kilometers pretty comfortably, like at any stage of my life now. Like even if I haven't swam for like 6 months, I could go and do that. And that's just from the years and years of swimming and paddling. And that goes with anything. Anyone, probably someone that lifts weights their whole life, they can go back and do that. But I feel like for me, it's more the mental side, knowing that, if you're coming off an injury or you haven't been training and a swell happens to pop up, I think in the back of my mind, knowing that, like, even though I haven't maybe done a lot of training, that base and the ability to be calm and hold your breath from all those years of doing that, I think gives you the confidence to be able to go out, and maybe when other people might go, hey, I need to sit this one out because I haven't been training.
Fully, 100%. Did you ever see how many lengths of a 25-meter pool you can do underwater?
Yeah, we used to do that all the time as a kid. I nearly do it until we passed out. Yeah. Well, I used to swim in an Olympic-sized pool, so 50. So I think at one stage, I probably could do better now than I did back then. But I think I nearly got to nearly 100 meters, not quite. So like a full length of the 50, and then 3/4 of the way back. So that's maybe like, what's that? So 225s, 325s, maybe a bit over 325s. But I mean, I was in full training, like running, swimming, paddling, like just full beast mode style, So, but I think now
you feel like you can take on anything when you're doing that long underwater.
Yeah. And I feel that when you, now probably with what we know with, breath work and, the training that you can do underwater. And if you have someone that can, teach you, I think understanding that now, you can probably push yourself a little further too than what you could as a 13-year-old kid.
Yeah, fully. Yeah.
So you said 12, you moved to the beach when you were 12. At that stage, you were just starting to learn. Were you surfing before you moved to the beach, or was it just sort of dribs and drabs, or was it when you really moved to the beach that you could go every day that's when the passion really started to kick in?
Yeah, I started surfing when I was 6, and my dad's really helped me in surfing. Like my dad's 65, and he had his first session at Dungeons 2 years ago. So he's like a full legend. He's been surfing for 55 years. But yeah, he used to take me down when I was 6 to Musenberg Beach, which is like the learn to surf. And then, yeah, when I was 12, we moved to Cormacky, and that's when I picked up a sponsor at Billabong and started doing competitions. And then, yeah, I always, I would go out with my dad to like the slightly bigger waves, and I was supposed to sit in the channel and watch him, and then I'd always end up in the lineup with him. And I definitely felt like a tendency to enjoy the bigger stuff like a lot more than my friends in the contest scene. And then I think I surfed Sunset for the first time when I was like 15, and then Dungeons for the first time when I was 17. And that Dungeon session, like, I thought I was going to drown. I had like the worst experience, and I'm like, I'm not doing this big wave stuff anymore. And I was actually paddling towards the channel to get out the water, and then this, like, because I paddled wide, another huge set broke over the crowd, and I just happened to be in the perfect spot. Something just told me to spin and go, and I had the wave of my life back there, and I pulled out, and everyone in the channel was cheering, and then I was like, oh my gosh, like, I want to be a big wave surfer.
That's crazy. Isn't that crazy how you can just go from, I was saying it the other week to Aaron Gold, you know, because hero to zero, big wave surfing will just like slap you so fast. Like you just get the wave of your life, because we're talking about how Aaron had got that wave at Jaws, obviously. And then I think it was the next summer he went and nearly drowned at Cloudbreak, you know, and it's that nearly of feeling of invincibility that we nearly need to keep a reality check of, hey, it's nearly the smaller sessions and the sessions that you think are going to be easy, they're the ones that teach you the most lessons.
For sure. Hey, yeah, that was Aaron's situation looked so scary. My friend Benji Brand was over there, I think, with him through the whole time, and it just sounded so scary. And yeah, you think like, how can someone like Aaron who surfed the biggest wave ever paddled into, and like, I don't know if he's even like pulled his vest really before, and then he goes down on a wave at Cloudbreak. You think, yeah, quite crazy.
Yeah, just a quick reminder that Mother Nature is in charge, not us. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So at 12, I'm guessing you start doing local contests. You get a feel for that, and then was there any ambition to? I did read that you did a few QSs and stuff like that, but like you said before, you always found yourself sort of losing to guys that you thought were better, and you're always doing better in maybe bigger conditions. So was that sort of maybe a time where you started to think, well, you know what, maybe the QS is not for me, and I'm enjoying the bigger stuff? Is that when sort of the mind switched to maybe going, hey, I'm going to maybe try this big wave thing a little bit more seriously?
Yeah, I felt like I was like as good in the free surfs as the other guys in the smaller waves, but then the comps, I don't know, I didn't really have that. Maybe I didn't have the mentality to like get the right waves and really like step up. You can see those guys who have got that winning mentality, like when the pressure's on, they just step up and surf their best. And I felt like I didn't have that, and I kept like losing to people who I thought like I shouldn't be losing to. And I remember I did traveled for one QS to Scotland, and I was there with like all these people, and the waves were half a foot on this little like slab, right? And I lost my first heat, and then that was like when I said I'm never doing this again. But yeah, I was fortunate enough to go to Hawaii like super young, because the Benji Brand and his family, they used to live 6 months of the year in Cape Town and then 6 months in Hawaii. Like their house is like 150 meters down from Pipe on the beach. And they were like our family friends, and they would have me like every winter from when I was really young So I got exposed to like the North Shore power, like really young, way younger than all my mates. And I felt like that was also a huge stepping stone for me to getting used to juice and like bigger waves. And yeah,
what age was that? When did you start coming to Hawaii?
I think when I was 13.
Oh, wow.
14. Yeah. And I just got like so drilled and tuned and just like roughened up that it was really good for me. I think I needed that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard it's hard, right? Because a lot of people don't like to travel and especially Hawaii, it's tough to get waves and so some people may come once and just be like, you know what, what's the point, But I think those people that keep persevering and coming back to Hawaii and, obviously, you get that one wave and people like, oh, that guy will charge or that he'll go. And then, you take all the closeouts until you get that opportunity and you start to get a little bit of respect. And because it seems like for me, like this is the interesting thing, you really seem like, I mean, obviously you love giant waves, but am I wrong in saying that you love big, heaving, heavy barreling waves? Like that's where you probably excel the most because, it seems like, okay, you come to Hawaii. Benji obviously is an amazing barrel rider. Like that's what he excels at. I'm sure that where you grew up, there's amazing spots where you guys go get barreled. And obviously you've got that whole coast. Like it just seems like it's just barrels all the time. But, you come to Hawaii, pipe, off the wall, backdoor, there's all these spots that are world-class barrels. And then it seems like you're the most comfortable, when it gets big and barreling.
Yeah, that's like my absolute passion is like big, steep barrels. I'm busy making a film called Over the Edge, and it's all about like that moment when you like look over the edge and it's just beyond vert and steep, and that's like when you're probably most terrified, but also that's the most exciting. And when you like override that instinct to say no and you just go for it, waves like backdoor, pipe, off the wall, like that was where I learned really, I think, to ride really steep waves, and that really lit the passion.
Yeah.
Talking about heavy waves with my little cat.
Yes. Little fluffy cat. So when you start, you're 13, you're sponsored by Billabong, you start going to Hawaii. Now, is this in between like school? You're at this time, you're obviously going to school in South Africa. So what was that like? Did you get, you finished high school? Was there any inkling to go to college or to get a so-called real job, or what was Matt Bromley's mindset? Was it like, I'm going to be a professional surfer? Like where did your mind set, like growing up into those teenage years?
Well, I was definitely more interested in like the steeper, bigger barreling waves than being like a full big wave surfer. That was my dream, was to be like a free surfer, just to chase like the biggest deep water kind of slab waves.
Like a Dave Rustovich.
Yeah, I guess like a Dave Rustovich. Yeah,
something like that.
For sure. Yeah. And my dad's a lawyer, so he always taught me like, no matter what you're doing, work at it 8 hours a day. So like whether you're surfing, doing your school, after school, I did a marketing degree through a business management degree through correspondence. So I was like always taught growing up like to work hard, whatever you're doing. And I think like after school, I started to really focus all that energy and reflecting on like the right mindset to surf big waves and like reflecting on the right training. And it was really after that dungeon session I had that I started to like, all my training started to become like specifically for waves of consequence that are scary, and like getting the right equipment, getting the breath hold stuff right. Like I've done a couple of really cool breath hold courses. Then that's kind of all built, and with communicating with my sponsors and stuff and picking up Monster Energy along the way, it really helped. I made my film Risky Business in 2016, and that really solidified me, I guess, being a big wave surfer guy.
Yeah, no, because it's like it's interesting because I like, growing up in South Africa, obviously, South Africa is sort of like Australia in a way. Like you're so far away from everything. It's such a long way to get everywhere. It's so expensive. And, obviously the support in South Africa, it seems like you've had good support, but, it's challenging. The rand doesn't go a long way. And then even even like I'd like to hear about even having the South African passport, it's not always easy to get into certain countries, and you get drilled a lot, coming into countries, speaking to a couple other South Africans. So was it hard, growing up in South Africa, like to try and, start to go, hey, like I want to go and chase big swells? Is it like I'm just going to focus around home, or how does that work being a young South African surfer?
Well, I think fortunately growing up in Cape Town, we have so many good big wave spots here. So it's such a good breeding ground to learn how to ride big, heavy waves. And then, I learned very quickly how tricky it was to not have a schedule, to just try chase swells. Like my passport, I've got to have a visa. The only place I don't need a visa, I think, is for Ireland. But everywhere else, it's like really far to travel. I need a visa everywhere. So at the beginning of the year, I have to get all the visas that I think that I might need for the year. And you can't really do anything last minute. Like coming over to Hawaii takes 50 hours of travel to get there. So it's always been really, really challenging. And I used to just do stints. I'd be like, okay, Hawaii, I'm going there for 6 weeks. I book it in and get everything ready and fly over. But in the last 4 years, I've really tried to wait for the swell, see it coming, and then book the ticket. I think one of the most tiring and stressful things I've ever done was chasing a jaws swell from Cape Town. Seeing that swell coming, weighing up all the elements and speaking to the guys on the ground at Jaws, and then making the call, flying 50 hours, and you arrive and you're so tired, and then you got to get in the right mindset to surf Jaws, which is the scariest wave in the world. And that was the biggest challenge. I think I arrived 2 days before, but even the time zone is the direct opposite, so you just feel totally out of your comfort zone, and then you got to try ride the big waves. And so it has been very challenging, for sure.
Yeah, I know. And if you really think about what we do, to be cost effective, you have to try and think ahead in advance, and those last minute flights are always expensive. And it's such a tough way to make a living, but so rewarding in the same time, But
sure,
was that swell you're talking about? That wasn't the contest swell this year, was it? That you did that?
No, fortunately, this year I was there for the Eddie ceremony, so I was there anyway. So it was just kind of a bonus. But that was in 2018, and the swell actually turned out to be also kind of pretty wonky, and I ended up just getting the worst beat downs. I think I was just totally in the wrong space.
Yeah, it's hard, man. Traveling, even just surfing Jaws and then doing a red eye and surfing Mavericks the next day, it's tough. It was a lot easier 10 years ago, and then when you get older, it's you start to realize it's a bit of a young man's game, doing the real hunting. When you're constantly chasing back to back to back. It's if you're already somewhere and you're settled in and the swell's coming, you're sleeping in your own bed, then be like dungeon. It'd be like me trying to get the dungeons on a last minute swell from Hawaii.
Man, so nice.
And then surfing that, I'd be like, I did a last minute swell to Ireland to go surf Mullaghmore. I literally flew into the airport, got picked up. They drove me straight to get a car. I drove to Mullaghmore first time. It was so cold. I literally got there. It was pumping big, 20 feet, and just windy offshore. And I literally laid the seat down in my rental car and went to sleep. I said, I want nothing to do with this. I will die if I go out there and try and surf this right now, And I just flew halfway around the world, spent all this money, and I was so exhausted and so tired that I literally was like, I'm not doing it. I cannot do this, And it's brutal, man.
Yeah, that's really heavy, eh? especially also getting transported into such a different environment. I can imagine, like, we have cold weather here and cold water, but if you're coming from like peachy, warm Hawaii and try and rock up at Ireland, I mean, yeah, I go there every year and it's so cold and like, yeah, it's so hard to get in the right mindset to like really charge there because you're just so rattled by like everything that's going on around you there.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know if it's for me personally, Ireland. I don't know if I'll do it. I mean, I did it. I actually surfed it a couple of times. I surfed it on my sup actually one time, but
sure.
I don't handle the cold that well. I didn't grow up in 4.3s for like, you know, and to go do it and to actually sit there and wait for an hour or two getting cold and then have your moment and be able to perform.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's a toe wave for me or something, you know, being able to at least just get up and get into it, you know. But I actually want to surf that wave prowlers. That to me looks insane. Looks like a mini, like looks like a Maverick, so a carbon copy of Mavericks.
I think that wave is super rare because you need like no wind, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, those big storms in Ireland always come with so much wind. But yeah, like I went to Mali earlier this year and like it was really cooking. Like, oh my gosh, like you're taking off on waves that are like 15 to 20 foot and it feels like pipe. Like it's so steep. And I remember I had gloves on and I never surfed with gloves and I kept like wiping out because I just felt disconnected from the water and then I took the gloves off and my hands just went numb, like totally numb. But I had like after that one of the best waves of my life, but just like surfing with all that rubber on and Mullaghmore is such a sick wave, man. Like
yeah,
so good, but you just have to survive the elements when you're there. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's those guys. Those guys are gnarly, next level. Just shows what Tom Lowe does there is freaking insane, man. Like that wave he got last year was incredible. So growing up in Cape Town, so who are the guys that you sort of, you know, looked up to or took you under their wing, like when you started to hit dungeons and that? Because I became pretty good friends with Andrew Marr when he used to spend a lot of time. Shout out to Andrew. He's such a legend guy. I haven't seen him or spoken to him for a while. So make sure you say hello to him for me. But actually, I want to get him on the podcast. I'd love to get him on the podcast. It'd be awesome. But he's such a staple out at Waimea, and his laugh and energy, like you could hear him from a mile away. It was like, it's so good. But was someone like Andrew, someone that you would look up to, or that, you know, did those guys take you under their wing and get you out there?
Yeah, I think definitely Andrew and Simon Lowe. I think you've also met Simon. He's like also such a character. We've got like such characters here in Cape Town. But yeah, I think maybe those two guys were probably the most influential. I feel like the vibe is kind of here, like they're not really inviting you to come surf with them. You've kind of just got to like make the mission. Like the guys at Dungeons are walking over the headland through like the sketchiest like ghetto area and then this big cliff and then paddling off the rocks like out of Seal Island to Dungeons. You know, that's kind of, they expect you to just kind of do that. And then I think if you earn your spot in the lineup, then they really start giving you their wisdom. So like guys like Simon Lowe for sure and Andy. And then a guy called Glenn B, he's actually my godfather. He was one of the dudes who was towing with the rubber ducks like way back when out at sunsets. And I really looked up to him when I was super young because those guys were just charging. They were like they would go into the impact zone with the rubber duck with the blade spinning and like pick up somebody like
with all that bull kelp and stuff, yeah?
Yeah, with big pieces of kelp and like, yeah, those guys were so crazy. So I think those were probably initially the dudes I looked up to. And I've been so fortunate enough to travel around the world and surf with yourself, Jamie, and guys like Shane. And like, I feel like guys like Shane and you guys, I studied like what you do on the takeoff and take little bits from all over the place. So yeah, for sure. There hasn't really been like one solid mentor. but yeah, I've taken bits from all over, and I've really tried to apply when I went and surfed pipe and backdoor for the first time, I learned so much. Like, those waves are so steep and breaking so quickly. And I really tried to apply that to like bigger wave surfing. Like, how do you take off on like a 25-foot wave when it's sucking off the reef and it's so steep? Like, try and apply those principles to big wave surfing, which has been awesome.
like the West Bowl at Mavericks. Like the West Bowl at Jaws where Albie sits, or at Mavericks, like, it's because really, like, you are taking off as steep as backdoor, but except it's like 4 times as big.
Yeah, fully, yeah.
Crazy.
But I do find that, like, I don't know if you find it, like, bigger waves, they take longer to break. So, like, even though they look heavier and more gnarly, like, you've got more time if you commit. Like, a lot of the time you can make something that you don't think is really doable. Like, because the face of the wave is so much bigger.
Yeah. Hey, I want to take a step back, because I want you to paint the picture, because you guys from South Africa are freaking gnarly, man, and just the elements up in Cape Town or down in Cape Town, and just like you were talking about the older guys, they'd walk over the Cape down, and I'd like you to take us through what it's like to paddle out to dungeons, because I've heard stories. It's through a channel. There's great white sharks. There's seals. I just take anyone that's listening that doesn't know dungeons, but what it's like, because obviously now with jet skis and boats and stuff, but it seems like the first time you're surfing it, you ain't getting on a jet ski. You've got to go through the initiation of doing the paddle out all the way through that channel.
Well, if I'm honest, I've actually never done it. I've been fortunate enough to the first couple of times I went down to the harbor and there were boats going out, and I just jumped on one of the boats, and I didn't even know the skipper, and he took me under his wing and took me out there. But yeah, like, a lot of the dudes, it's so hardcore, man. Like, there's this we call it like a township. It's like this ghetto area on the back of the peak, and it's like I'm actually been reading a book on like all the poaching that's happening, and that there's like such gnarly gangsterism in there. Like, if you park there, you have to get the chief of the village to look after your car, otherwise it's not going to be there when you come back. And then you walk over this like huge mountain peak down the steep mountain, which is going to be such a mission with a big board, like way bigger and gnarlier than the little hill at Jaws. And then, there's probably about a 300-meter gap where there's no waves from like the rocks to where the waves fade out. And you're paddling next to Seal Island. So like, it's like a deep spot, and it must feel pretty eerie, like paddling over that deep spot where there's no waves. And there's always so much activity in the water there, like seals and dolphins. And I've never seen a shark there before, but I'm sure there's big sharks lingering because of Seal Island right there. And then, once you get out to dungeons, it's freezing cold. You're always surfing there in the middle of like a Cape storm. And it's just like such a rogue setup. Like, the wave is as a result of refractions. There's two rocks like super far to see, and those are like the indicators when a big set comes. They actually cap and break. And
is that spot called is that Tafelberg? What they call Tafelberg further out? Is that the?
Yeah. So there's Tafelberg Reef where Twiggy like towed that one monster wave, and then there's another one called Vulcan Rock, and like where the wave comes in and then gets refracted, and then when it hits the reef at Dungeons, it's the size of like, I don't know how big a football field is, but like 2 rugby fields, the area where you can take off. It's just totally random, and it's so raw, and it's always lumpy. And then like when the wave comes in, the reef is so uneven. So you never know if you're going to get a flat wave or you're going to take off and you're going to get like a step halfway up. You could just be airdropping. Like I had a wave towards the end of last year that I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get the wave of my life. And it was this huge, scary, big, thick bomb. And like, as I took off, it just had like this warping step sucking off the reef. And you don't really ever get that on big waves normally. and my 10-2 was like way too big for the step, and I just nosedived and had the worst beat down ever. So it's just like, it's so unpredictable, it's so shifty and scary and like really tricky, and everything about it is terrifying. And I think that's what's kept like a lot of people from coming from overseas to ride it, because it does deliver up massive, incredible big surf, but it's just so tricky to read it, and the whole thing is quite a mission.
Yeah, no, it seems very shifty. Is it hard to have a lineup? And then even like you said, if you have a lineup, do you just, you just have to wait because there's waves going to be like either side of you and everything. So it's like you nearly just have to dodge the waves that are breaking around you until like maybe the wave that comes to the spot that you like, or is it really just like you're going to get lucky? Like, are there guys that are always getting good waves that sort of know the reef really well, or is it just like you could get the wave of your life one session and the beat down of your life the next session, no matter how good you are and no matter what the lineups you've got out there? Is that how it is?
Yeah, you kind of, I think nobody's got it super dialed out there. I think the most dialed dude is probably Twig. I remember the first time I surfed Dungeons, the horizon was breaking and like everyone was paddling for the horizon. Like I had no idea. I was just following everyone else. And Twig was sitting there, and he was just like, where are you guys going? Like, this is the reef. This is where it's going to break. It's not going to break further out. And I couldn't believe, like, I thought he was being cocky, but he knew exactly where he was on that part of the reef. And he gets the biggest bombs out there all the time. There's kind of like, I would say there's probably 3 distinct areas. Like the wider part next to the boats is called there's a part of the reef that rises up called the 2.5, and you can be riding along a really nice wave and suddenly you go over like a boil step, like ship sterns kind of vibe, and that's really unpredictable and sketchy. And then in the middle, most of the people probably surf between the 2.5 and the deep peak. So there's the middle peak, which is probably the safest, and then like the big bombs are furthest away from the channel, like you're heading more towards like outside the Seal Island, and the deeper you go up there, the further away you are from help, because if you're too far up, the jet skis can't get you because there's so much seaweed. So it's like pretty dangerous because you on your own if you wipe out there. And there's a peak out the back there that like no one really sits there because it's very hard to find, but that you get like absolutely monumental size waves out there. And I think like that's where you could like get the XXL biggest wave one day out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I normally like to sit kind of on the 3rd peak from the channel, which is the deeper part. And you get like a beautiful big double up peak there, and it sucks off the reef really hard. But yeah, when you take off on a wave out there, you never know what you're in for. Like you get a big wall and it could turn into a beautiful big reeling barrel. It could turn into a massive closeout, or you could be airdropping over steps and boils and just getting annihilated.
It seems like most spots, like Jaws, the deeper you get, you're going to get the ones that stand up. Is there a way to get like a magic one that stands up and then you sort of are able to like get through the middle section, then all the way to the channel?
Yeah, there is. You have to be really patient, and you have to know where you are out there in the ocean. Also, what makes it really difficult is that the lineups, when you're out there at Dungeons, it feels like you've entered Jurassic Park. Like there's just huge mountain peaks all around you. So to make a lineup, there's not really like a tree and something else behind it. You're just looking at a massive mountain face. So it's so tricky to know where you are. I think a lot of people more look at the boils and like the bubbles coming up, because the ocean's always got these super rough out there and these boils coming out. And there's definitely on that like deep peak, I've often had like really good waves, but if I could have been like 20 meters behind it, I would have been standing up inside like a 20-foot barrel. And it's so, you got to have a lot of confidence to backdoor a wave out there because it's so raw and you never know what it's going to do, but there's incredible waves to be had out there.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah, and like you were saying, you're saying that it's hard for the jet skis to come in, because I always wonder, like at Mavericks, early season at Mavericks, you get the kelp, at the start, the first few sessions, there's always kelp there and you can hit that thing and just eat shit from your fins hitting and you can rip your fins out. Like I've always wondered, like over there in dungeons, like what it's like to wipe out. It must be, I mean, do people get stuck? Like when you fall, I imagine trying to get up through that kelp is like incredibly freaking scary. Like, and like you said, you can't come in with a jet ski because there's so much kelp. Like, I mean, take us through what that's like, because that seems super dangerous.
Yeah, so if you do come off like way up the reef, you're pretty much on your own because you're going into like thick kelp beds. And if you think that like, yeah, it's way thicker than what you have at Mavericks, like you literally wouldn't be able to ride straight through it because your fins would catch and you would just be tumbling over your board. So like the best part of the wave doesn't get near the kelp, but if you get like two waves on the head, you're going straight into the kelp bed. And underwater, you just like the heads of the kelp is already hard, so you're just getting like whacked by these heads of seaweed, and you can get all tangled up with your leash and stuff. But I mean, yeah, I've grown up with it, so I've kind of learned how to just relax in the seaweed. But it's super intimidating for people coming from overseas because you can get stuck underneath the layer, but like as the waves come, it like opens up. But you can get, for a moment, you can get stuck underneath it and you feel like trapped.
My God.
Yeah, so
it sounds like the worst
it's super sketchy. And yeah, and like the worst part is the jet ski can't come in there to get you because you wouldn't be able to go over the top beds at all. So you have to get through the seaweed, get washed through that into the deep part, and then on the inside, the ski can come get you.
Wow. No thanks.
But
no wonder you guys have got it to yourself.
After surfing, like in those sketchy conditions, like somewhere like Jaws, even though it is so shifty, it just feels like a dream, like how perfect it is compared to the waves that we have, the dungeons. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. Then what, so, I mean, you guys had the Red Bull you guys had the Red Bull Big Wave Africa event, which was super successful back in the day. And I'm not sure the timeline for where you were at with that. Was that something when that first started? Did you ever surf in that, or were you too young? Was that before you sort of got to the point where you were surfing out there, or do you remember watching that event and watching those guys and guys like Greg and Jamie Sterling, I think Healy and Cole would used to come over and surf in that?
Yeah, man. I used to look up to those guys and I was so pumped watching it. I never got to surf in it though. I was still super young. And then, like just as I started getting into the big wave stuff, unfortunately, that contest stopped. But it was so sick seeing like the best surfers in the world, like on our home turf, charging it and like guys getting the most incredible rides and guys also like, noting how powerful it is and how much respect you need to have for that wave. I think they had like the one Red Bull year, they had like, the waves were so massive. I think everyone was just like so terrified. Yeah, but I just got to watch it. It was amazing to watch. And unfortunately, when my time came around, then it had stopped really.
Yeah. What is like sort of comparing, say, dungeons to like a Jaws or a Mavericks or something like that? Where does it rate? Because you've surfed them all, you've surfed a lot of heavy water waves, and I haven't surfed dungeons, so I have no idea. But let us know for people that maybe for the guys that are listening that surf big waves, like what is it? What's it compared to? What's it like compared to these other waves?
I would say like it's up there on its day. It doesn't often have the perfect day, but on the perfect day, it's definitely up there with one of the best big waves in the world. I think like it's so raw and unpredictable, like that it really shapes you for bigger wave surfing and kind of the unpredictability. I remember going over to like Waimea for my first time, and I couldn't believe how small the takeoff spot was. I was like, the waves are maybe bigger than what I've surfed before at Dungeons, but like the takeoff spot's in the same place every time. And that just knowing that the sets are not going to break outside you, that you can have full confidence in your lineups and your takeoffs in the takeoff on the zone there just helped me so much. And then like, I mean, I think Jaws kind of stands apart from all the other big waves. It's just so big and terrifying. But again, Jaws, like how perfect that wave is. Like you can paddle into a wave that's just wrapping in on the reef and bending. It's like a perfect massive barrel. And I feel like when a wave comes, it wraps in at Jaws, you can get a pretty good read on what it's going to do. Whereas at Dungeons, you just have no idea what's happening. So like, I felt like riding 20-foot waves at Dungeons really helped me to like feel comfortable in waves much bigger out at Jaws. And also then again, surfing Mavs, like the takeoff spot at Mavs was also so small. And like, if you get your lineups right out there at Mavs and a set comes, you're going to be in the spot to go, you know, which is so different to a place like Dungeons where you just feel like you're in the middle of nowhere and it's a bit of a guessing game.
Yeah. It seems like Dungeons, you think you might be taken off in the wave of your life and it's not, or you could be taken off in a wave that you're like, I'm going to go anyway, and it turns into an incredible wave. And then that's tough. That's tough to be surfing a big wave spot like that. But as you said, to be able to take that to Jaws, where it's like pretty much like backdoor on steroids, or like you say, even Mavs and Waimea, where the takeoff spot is pretty compact. And, you know, there are little bits of reef that, you know, the waves do things a little differently, but definitely nothing like what it seems like at Dungeons, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like at a place like Jaws, where the waves are so big and crazy, you can push yourself. You can have so much more confidence in your ability to just go on a wave that's so big and terrifying, because you do have a sense of like the wave is drawing off the reef. This thing is going to barrel. This thing is going to let me out. And you can really like push yourself that much harder because you kind of confident, you have an idea of what the wave is going to be doing. Yeah,
it's awesome. And then, so sunset is across the bay, because that's always intrigued me. So it seems like when Dungeons is big and giant, or maybe not surfable, then sunset is more forgiving and just it's a more perfect wave. Is it always a little bit smaller than what Dungeons is? So it's like it seems like it's a great backup wave that may even be a better wave than Dungeons.
So it's actually like the perfect setup, because sunset's on the one side of the bay. So if we get south winds, then it's offshore at sunset. And then if we get north winds, which are like the big storms, then it's offshore at Dungeons. So pretty much any time we've got a big swell coming into the bay, coming from the southwest, then if it's southerly out there at sunset, if it's northerly, you're surfing Dungeons. Sunset is like definitely a lot more perfect and predictable. It's kind of like this finger of reef that just reaches super far out to sea, and it's really deep on either side. So starting off at like 10 to 12 foot, it's just a super easy, mellow entry big wave spot, and it's so beautiful out there. Like you're surfing again, like all these massive mountain peaks around you. It's like my favorite place in the world to be. And then there's kind of like these ledges. So when it's like 12 foot, it's got a really nice barrel that you can backdoor, and it's super predictable. So you just paddle in behind the peak and you can thread the needle and get a really nice quick barrel on it. Then there's a bit of like there's like a 15-foot ledge, which is not very steep. And then it kind of goes to the 20-foot ledge. And then when you're on the 20-foot ledge, then it again starts to get really steep and hollow. And I still think we haven't really paddled it to near as big as what we should have. The guys kind of start towing it when it's kind of hitting that 20-foot mark normally, but I'm like super pumped. And I think so many guys are amped to start paddling into it when it's a lot bigger. But it's really awesome because you've got as a line up to the side, you've got the lighthouse, and it lines up with each house. So like when the lighthouse lines up with that house, you know you're on the 12-foot marker. The lighthouse lines up with the next house, you're on the 15-foot marker, and then when the lighthouse lines up with Benji Brand's old house, then that's like the 20-foot ledge. And when you're out there, then you know it's pretty big and serious. But I've seen waves out at sunset that are, when it hits that 20-foot mark, it starts getting really hollow. And then as it gets bigger and bigger, it just gets hollower and hollower. And the peak turns into much more of a wall. Back at the end of 2018.
Sorry, I was going to say, I've seen, I think it was Simon Lowe and Andrew Marr, I think, but I saw an incredible photo of them towing, and it just, and the back, like he was just in the giant barrel, and it looked like big perfection, you know?
Yeah, it's a crazy big wave that's super underrated. And if you got the balls to backdoor it, you can get a huge barrel, but the beatings out there actually probably worse than dungeons, because the reef like kind of gets shallower very slowly. At dungeons, it goes into deep water, so you have two beat downs and you into deep water. Whereas at sunset, you can have like 6 in a row, and it gets shallower and shallower as you go in. And because it's like a finger with deep water on either side, all the energy is converging together. So I think you get way more work out at sunset actually. And as sunset gets bigger, it just keeps reaching further and further out to sea. So like on those rising swells, it's terrifying out there, because like if the wave is like a couple feet bigger, it's breaking way further outside you, and you get caught inside out there quite a lot.
Yeah. What is the protocol like for you guys over there? Because I'm sure that, you know, a bunch of the old crew there still charging, that still would like to tow those waves, but obviously you guys are trying to push the paddle. Because what is the group up there like? Is you know, Frank, like who are the guys that? It seems like there's a lot of young, good, up and coming chargers, plus a lot of established guys that are still pushing the limits, paddling. Like, is there are the older guys still like encouraging of like letting you guys go out and try and paddle stuff like that when it gets to that toe size?
Yeah, we've got such a good brotherhood of big wave surfers here. Like everyone is super respectful of each other, and it's really awesome. Like a lot of places around the world, it seems like as the waves get bigger, people get more friendly and respect one another more. I think the older guys, a lot of them are quicker to tow when it gets like maybe there's a bit of wind on the face or it's getting bigger, but they're super like, if guys are paddling and they're like really trying to get the waves, then it's full like no tow. And then it's just like full paddle. And there's guys like Frank and Josh always flies down from Durban, and there's a big swell, and there's such an amazing younger crowd coming up, kind of being led by my friend Fabian. He just spent the whole season at Nazaré, just getting worked and getting some pretty sick waves, but he's super hungry to get some really big waves out there. And there's a whole younger crew of guys who are amped to paddle it bigger and bigger, which is really, really exciting. The thing about sunset, when it does get big, it does have quite a lot of water moving through it. And so like there's definitely days out there when there's too much water moving and you just can't paddle it. Like I know that Twiggs had some massive paddle waves out there with like toe assist because it's just impossible. There's still like so much more to be had out there at sunset. It's so exciting. Yeah,
it looks like an incredible wave, and looks like you said it's gnarlier maybe, but it looks a little bit more as being in the lineup looks a little bit more forgiving than the Dungeons lineup.
Yeah, yeah.
So
it's
classic. Sure, so I want to I know we started talking about Dungeons a lot, but I want to talk about that session in Nias that you guys had a few years back too. I mean, that seemed like it's a real standout session for you. I mean, that swell went viral around the world, and you got a ton of some of the best waves that whole couple of days swell. What was the water like? Because I mean, I remember seeing the footage of the boat going over and the way that the water was drawing off the reef. It was just one of those once in a lifetime swells. Like I remember people saying that they'd never seen water move like it was moving, and What was it like for you being there for that swell? And was that the end of? Did you get some filming as well for one of your? Was that risky? Did you finish Risky Business there or?
Yeah, so that was kind of like the start, fortunately, of filming for Over the Edge. So we've still been holding on to all our footage for that, which I'm super excited to show you guys. But yeah, that swell was unbelievable. Like starting off from the evening before, the swell was supposed to hit the day before, and like it just wasn't showing any signs. And I went out on my shortboard just for an evening surf, and it was probably like head high. And then like a 6-foot set came through, then like an 8-foot set came through, and I caught like one of the set waves, and I was paddling back out, and suddenly the horizon went dark, and like the gnarliest set I've ever seen at Nias just came, and like going from pretty mellow waves to just like the most evil thing I've ever seen. It was like a 12-foot double up, but I looked over the edge of it, and you could see the ripples going off the reef like this, like you could see the shape of the reef. And I think there were 2 waves in that set, and then it was getting dark, and I went in, and it had ripped like massive chunks of coral off the reef, and it smelled like like all the sea creatures had been ripped off the reef. It was all like smelled like fish, and there were these like new coral heads that had been washed up, and then like we're like, oh my gosh, the swell has arrived. And it's so sick at Nias. I don't know if you've been there, but like you stay right on the point, and just staying in my little bungalow, and you could just hear like the ocean was so loud. And then the next morning I woke up, and the waves were surging through the restaurants in between the houses, and I looked out, and it looked like, all I can describe is it looked more like Mavericks than Nias. Like the water had turned brown, it was all churned up, and that slab, it looked like the slab at Mavs. Like the waves were, nobody could actually tell. If you weren't there, you wouldn't have known how big it was, because nobody was going on the set waves, and there was no perspective. I mean, the set waves, like, I don't know, like they were like 15-foot plus, like there were huge waves coming through. And I thought no one was going to surf because it was too big. And then like Laurie, Towner, and I think Jughead paddled out at first light, and like they got a couple of good waves, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe guys are even paddling out there. And then I went out, and I felt like super nervous, and there was so much water moving. Everyone you could see was like all the dudes were there, like Billy and Ian Walsh and Koa, Rothman, and like
Healy.
These sets were marching in, and everyone was just looking at them. Like nobody was paddling for the sets, because they were untouchable. And we were all trying to like find our bearings out there, and then suddenly the boat breaks off the mooring and like floats into the lineup, and then that thing, and then gets hit. That was actually an insider that hit that wave and hit the boat and like threw it over the falls, and then it just added, I think, more tension in the lineup and stress, and then we didn't know whether we could catch a wave, like, because we didn't know if the boat was floating upside down in the lineup still or not. And then that kind of all eventually cleared, and then I just remember like thinking, this is the day when you can really get the wave of your life and make a name for yourself. And I went and sat, like, I've got really good markers out there at Nias with like a few palm trees and towers and stuff, and I went and sat like way outside that, and I just started like praying and doing my deep breathing exercises and getting in the zone, because I was like feeling so uncomfortable. And then this just really insane big blob of water popped up, and at Nias it's so scary because it's really deep off the back of the ledge, so it just looks like a big bubble of water. It hasn't like reared up at all. And then like as the front of the wave hits the reef, the front stops, and then the back starts catching up with it, and it grows and it just gets super steep. And I looked at this wave and I was like, I'm just going to give this thing a crack, like no matter what. It looks like an incredible wave, and I'm just going no matter what. And then as I started paddling, then some of the guys started shouting for me to go, and I was like, then that revved me up further. And I remember feeling like, oh my gosh, I've got this. And then as I popped up, it just fell away underneath me. And I remember I lost my board. I wasn't connected to my board at all, the whole drop. And when I landed, like my board was under my feet. And I was like, couldn't believe it's like the drop and then just pulled up into like one of the biggest barrels I've ever been in. And yeah, that was definitely the best drop I've ever had in my life. And like, yeah, that's probably going to be the intro wave to the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then later that afternoon, again, I also had another one that was the viral clip I had that one in the afternoon. It was a great day. It was a humbling day. Like the set waves coming through were just monstrous and crazy.
Yeah. You know what it sounds like to me, that story you said about it breaking off the reef was the cloud break swell when the contest was on in 2012. And that first famous wave that you see coming through, and I think Healy's board is through the lip. Same thing happened there. You know, like after that first set came through, all the reef was, all the little bits off the reef were through the lineup. It was like spawn off the reef, and you could smell. It was like you could smell like a fishy smell, and it was just like, and that's the only 2 times that I was there for that. So I know it's what it like felt like and sounded like and smelt like, and it sounded like that swell. And it was the incoming swell, right? It was we knew it was coming, and that was the first giant wave of that swell, which just destroyed the bottom of the reef with all that big period energy. And it seemed like that's the exact same thing that happened there at Nias.
I just want to ask, like, how close were you to that big set? That looked like the most terrifying thing imaginable.
Yeah, actually, at that stage, I was working the contest. I was hired by the WSL to do the water safety, so I was losing my mind because at that stage the contest had been called off, but I had my big board shipped over, and we knew it was going to be, obviously that swell was coming, but I was committed to, all the CT guys were starting to try and go out and get waves. So even though it wasn't a contest, we were like, hey, we got to look after these guys. We got to look after everyone. People are eating shit and. So we basically, I was just watching for a couple of hours, and then Kybor Garcia eventually was like, we're all on the ski, me, him, my best mate's Billy Watson, and then he's like, hey boys, you want to go get a couple? And we were just like, yeah. So we're finally able to run and grab our boards, but unfortunately we're pulling everyone out of the pit at that stage. But yeah, it was incredible, because the contest had been called off, and then Nathan Fletcher paddled out first, I think. And then you just, we saw this 25-foot perfect left barrel just firing down the reef. And everyone's like, oh my God. Like you start seeing everyone starts grabbing their boards, jumping off the boats. Everyone's trying to get out there.
Man.
It's just one of those swells, that you're there, it's coming. A lot of swells peak through the night. You wake up, it's already, that first energy's already rolled through. Whereas, the swell like Nias or that one there, like the swell at Jaws, the Aaron Gold day, like it was 20 foot in the morning and no one wanted to surf, and it was perfect. Everyone was waiting. And then it was like, all of a sudden, I just remember that day being so unique because I remember looking at guys taking waves on the inside, which I thought was the inside, and you're like, oh, that's a 15-footer. And you see the footage of that thing back, and it was 20 foot. And then you're seeing waves, and you pass some 25-footers by, and then all of a sudden it was 30 feet. It was 5 feet bigger every 90 minutes. And you're just going, where am I sitting? The reality of what a wave looked like and how big it was so different than anything else I'd ever experienced that day at Jaws. Was like the small ones were giant, and obviously the giant ones were radical. It's
quite strange when that's happening because you're entering like new territory of what you don't know if it's possible or not. And then I guess like one guy like Aaron, like he put his hand up and went on that huge wave. But I don't know, it's quite a strange thing when all the besties are out there and like everyone's kind of feeling like, oh, like, is this doable or not, Like
it was the same feeling as what you said. Like when everyone's out there, everyone's looking at each other, and it's like, who's going to go? Like who wants it? And there was no like hustling for waves. It was just like if someone had that look and they committed, you were just going, go, go, go. You were so supportive because like, number one, you're probably like, well, I don't want that one. Or you just wanted to see that guy go, and it was, and it was so, because I was the way that Aaron got, I remember seeing him I was further out in the North Peak, and I remember looking in and going, oh, wow, like Aaron's going that one, you know, like it didn't seem big. Like as crazy as that sounds, I looked in and went, oh, yeah, Aaron got a good one. And then you you look at it and it wasn't even a big, like there was bigger ones, you know. It was just so radically mind altering and changing of perspective of what was possible, of just what you could have got, you know, like again, I went back from that session was sort of bummed because I'm like, I had so many chances at waves, but I passed by because I didn't think they were big ones, right?
Yeah, totally.
In the scheme of things, they would have been giant. Yeah. But you were like, but where you were, like, you know, there were bigger ones. So you were nearly scared to paddle, and even if you were to miss it and then one was behind it, oh my God, you know. So that was just that feeling of that day was so radically different. That day was the first day where it went to that next realm of like what was possible, what wasn't possible, who was willing to commit, you know, and it was a day that you'll never forget, you know, for you at Nias, you know, like it's just a once in a generation swell.
Yeah, it's quite like when you're in the moment and experiencing that, and you're like, you know, this is like one of those swells that's changing history kind of, and you're like, you got to just pluck up the courage and just got to send it.
Yeah, and how do you get there? Because everyone's different, but I mean, you are pretty known to send it on pretty much anything, you know, but I know that, and you're such a good surfer too. Like you're a guy that is not just a big wave guy, you know, you've got a great barrel game, you rip shortboarding as well, you know, so you're a great all-round surfer. And then to be able to have the mentality, I think, you know, it's like Shane Dorian, right? Like the guy was a CT level surfer, he's an incredible surfer, but he also has that mongrel, I would say mongrel in him to like he wants it. Like when he was in his prime, like you could see he wanted it and he was willing to roll the dice to like 50-50. And his ability, he made those things a lot. Like those 50-50 ones where a lot of people like probably wouldn't have made it. Like he just somehow manhandled it and pushed it over the ledge to go, you know, like where does that come from? Like for you, like, is it a you know, deep within burning desire? Like, you know, take me through that.
Well, definitely, like, if I'm honest, my faith plays a big part of it. Like, I believe at this point in time, like, I've been created for purpose to ride these big waves. And like, when I'm out there and it's really big and scary, like, I feel like a sense of purpose. Like, that's exactly where I'm supposed to be. And it feels amazing. Like, I always think of that movie In God's Hands, and like, that's like exactly how it feels for me. I think like to get in the zone, like obviously if you've been training hard, then that builds like a huge level of confidence if you feel like you've kind of done everything you can. And then I try get in like a yes mentality. So like, because even when you're out there and you're feeling good, a wave can pop up that's so big and scary, and you've got a split second decision, like, do I go or don't I? And your instinct's always kind of telling, well, for me at least, it's telling me not to go. Like, you're like, oh, that one's too scary, like I'm not going. And I try, like, I almost start saying to myself, like, yes. And I try, like, almost anticipate, like, spinning and going. When it says coming, I'm like, okay. I'm telling myself, like, if this one's perfect, I'm going. And it's like this mental battle going on inside my head. Like, hopefully when that really dream one pops up, like, I've got that yes mentality going strong and spin and go. And I think, I've got like a really strong drive to just while I'm fit and young, to get like the wave of my life and to push my boundaries as much as possible. And it's like, I get quite excited when I get that feeling in my chest that's like, no, this one's too scary, like the instinct saying no. And then I'm like, yes, this is the one, like, this is the challenge I've been longing for to step up to. I don't know, how do you deal with it, bro?
Yeah, it's the same sort of thing. I think it goes, I think everything is based off confidence and the time of your life you're in, you know, just mentally, emotionally, physically. I think that, you know, I think when you paddle out on a big wave session, you sort of know where you are in all those things, you know, like, so physical, Have I been training?
Yeah.
You know, am I injured? You know, emotionally, how's things at homes? Have you been fighting with the wife? You know, like, you know, how's family life? You know, all that stuff, you know, if you're being totally transparent, you know, and then mentally, you know, comes off both those things. Like, how am I feeling? Do I feel like I want to send it today? Am I feeling like mentally, you know, capable? And I think, you know, if all those things come together at that moment, I think that's when you have those waves, you know. And if there's 1 out of 3 or two out of those 3 that are working, then maybe it's a day where you go out and you're happy to get in a couple of medium-sized ones and happy to watch from the channel, you know, like, who knows, you know. But I think all those things matter. And depending on where you are at life, you know, in that moment, you know, I think it all matters, you know. And you know, I think it's like for you, like, we paddled out for that first heat at Jaws this year, and you were out there still by yourself trying to get a wave, right? You know, and it's like, and it's so stressful because, you know, you see us guys paddle out, you know, there's probably 10 minutes to go, and you're talking to us, and we're in the channel. And I remember, like, me, like Twiggy, you know, you're just going, hey, you got to go over there, man. If you want one, you got to get over in the pit, you know. But it's like, it's 25 feet and there's no one out, and, you know, like, the world's watching, and you want to get a wave. You probably want to get a clip, and it's totally stressful times, man. It's stressful. And when you sort of, I feel like, that mindset isn't conducive to getting a wave. Like, when you're under a time limit and you want it so bad, and it's just, it seems like it's not going to come that way, you know. But
totally, yeah. Like, when you have to rush things and you're like, I don't really have your lineup sussed. I feel like having your lineup sussed is such a big thing. Like, when you know that you're in the right spot, then it just adds such a confidence. And then, just like having the time to wait and pick your wave. Like, oh, this one, not the one I'm looking for, because you kind of like can feel the waves where they almost like want you to give them a crack, and there's the waves that are just untouchable almost, that are sucking too hard or bending too hard or something. And it's you definitely want to have that time to be able to pick and choose the one, and then so that when that one comes your way that you feel good about, that you just put everything into it and you're not hesitating one single bit.
Yeah, and that's what contest surfing does, man. I just haven't done well in contests because I feel rushed, I feel stressed, and then you haven't got a wave, and then you push one that you shouldn't push, and it's a stressful situation, you know. And those guys that maybe surf contests a lot, you know, they do a lot better, you know. That you know, you can definitely tell the guys that know how to surf contests that do a lot better in those things. But so where's Matt Bromley now? What's Matt Bromley's headspace? Like, where you know, I know we're living in a different world right now with sort of not much travel and stuff, but you know, I know the tour, the WSL got rid of the tour and stuff, because I know a lot of people would love to have seen you in some of those events. But was that a little frustrating not getting the chance to show yourself, you know, in some of those events, you know, in the past couple of years? Because I think we all know, I think guys like yourself, Laurie Towner, there's so many good guys that maybe just, you know, haven't had the limelight so much, you know, especially Laurie, but, you know, sort of taking a step back. But there's so many good guys that could have been in those contests. Was that something that was frustrating for you, not getting the chance?
It was a little frustrating because, like, when I watched events, like I knew that I could be on the biggest wave of the day. Like, I felt like I had the ability to do it. So, like, I felt like I could put myself in the mix and do really well. In another sense, like, I wasn't really like chasing it like maybe I should have. Like, I was more focused on chasing like big steep waves of consequence. And I think if I had been a bit more intentional earlier about like just going to every wave where there is a big wave event, even waves that are not as desirable, then maybe I could have had a better chance. But I think my main challenge or drive is to get like the biggest barrel of my life. So that's kind of been the deciding factor of where to do my trips. And there are, I mean, obviously there's like Jaws and Polo, which were on the tour, that were incredible. I would have killed to be in those events. And then there were the other events that were wasn't as desirable for me to be a part of. For sure.
Yeah, and it seemed like you've got your video you got your video going. You guys have definitely you've made a career out of those chasing those heavy water swells and the barrels, and you're making your edits and your movies, and if you look at where we are now, then you probably go, well, that's the right decision. If you chased the tour and missed up those opportunities, and now there is no tour, then you might look back and go, well, maybe I made the wrong call. But and I think it's hard. I think it's hard from South Africa because you got when you're coming from a place where it's so hard to get to and travel and to the money it takes to get to these spots. It's hard for Australians, South Africans, Southern Hemisphere to get to these places and put in performances and get recognised. So I think there's definitely some flaws in the system of trying to get into these events, but but hopefully in the future there's I think that even without events, I think big wave surfing, just the chasing the swells and the potential of all this. I think the swells themselves are events. They can turn into events themselves. The best big wave surfers turn up to the swells anyway, so they're there surfing the best swells every time there's a swell. Yeah,
exactly. Those are the most exciting times for me, is when all the best dudes are out there and there's waves coming through that nobody really wants a piece of, and then I guess to shout each other in to build up the confidence to go. And as you say, that's 100% an event when you are part of one of those life-changing days. It's so incredible. So for sure.
Yeah, it's incredible. Well, mate, I've taken up a lot of your time, but I usually do the end of the podcast. I do 5 questions to finish. So the first question is the best big wave in the world.
Jaws.
Yeah, it's a pretty common answer.
And the scariest.
Yeah, well, that's the second question. What's the heaviest big wave in the world?
Jaws,
yeah.
When I saw your wife out there, man, I that was the most terrifying thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it was pretty terrifying for me too in that moment. You go from, and that's going back to that point of taking a wave that you're under pressure to go, and but I actually thought I was going to get. I actually didn't just take that one to go. I actually thought I had to enter into that thing, and but obviously I got hung up. But that's where you have to switch flight to flight. You have to switch from you just instantly know this is really bad, but then you switch to okay, I've got to survive this. What am I going to do to switch mental modes to survive this? And
totally.
So yeah, it was a heavy one. But okay, question 3 was the most underrated big wave in the world.
Sunset Reef in front of my house.
Sunset Reef in front of your house. Yeah. That's I think there's so many radical waves that are out there we still don't know about. So. Yeah, fully.
And I've also been trying to get a handle on that massive barmy around the back of Nias. That's so nuts. And I've just I've surfed out there quite a few times by myself, and it's just huge barreling waves that seem untouchable, but if you can just get in the right mindset and put yourself in the right zone, you can get a crazy wave out there. But the consequences are also real.
Yeah. So this might feed into that question. What's one big wave that you haven't surfed that you would like to tick off the list?
Well, I still haven't been to Cloudbreak, so I would love to get Cloudbreak on one of those massive days when I think that does look like the best wave in the world when it's doing its thing. But I guess it's hardly ever gets that big and that big.
Yeah. Good question, good answer. And where do you think the next big wave discovery is? I always sort of say it like how Nazare just came onto the map. I'm wondering where's the next Nazare, or Jaws or Mavericks?
Well, I think there's I think Indo's got a couple really good bombies that are yet to be explored. I know Twiggy's been exploring a few under the radar. But like if you're trying to think in the realm of like Nazare and stuff, I have no idea.
Yeah, so much coastline, right? So much coastline, and there's probably a ton in Africa. You got to think there's probably a ton in South America. Who knows?
Yeah, I would think so. And I think of places like Ireland that just get hammered by 12-meter swells, like potentially somewhere on those coastlines. And you can see from the land in Ireland, there's these whitewater bombies like all over. And you just wonder like how big it really is, are those waves out there, and how crazy is it out there. But so, yeah I had to say probably Ireland there.
Yeah. Awesome, mate. Well, hey, thanks so much for being on the late drop. It was awesome to get a different perspective. I feel like, you guys in South Africa sort of get the raw end of the deal on a lot of things, but it was really interesting hearing about, the old guys and dungeons and surfing in South Africa, because you guys are next level, man. It's really unforgiving and really heavy over there, and I respect you guys a lot, and all the old legends over there that really were on the program, when Hawaii with the towing and all that, but just haven't, obviously they don't get the profile that all these other spots get. So thanks, Matt. I appreciate it. Good luck with everything, and I hope to actually share some waves with you this winter if the world opens up and we can travel.
Yeah, man, I really hope so. And if I can, I just want to give a quick shout out to, while in lockdown, I've been working a lot on developing my online surf courses.
Yes.
So I've got like a big wave surf course, which is all about mindset and technique, and like a barrel riding one, which is really awesome. So that's one of the things I've been working on. I really hope that we can link up soon sometime and catch one of those life-changing waves around the globe somewhere and travel opens up again.
Yeah, mate. Awesome. All right, mate. Take care.